Welcome to another Azure Guide video, where hands-on learning is priority one. I'm an Azure Administrator, an Azure Security Engineer, as well as an Azure Solutions Architect. Configuring Terraform and the provider version to use. Hey, welcome to my very first video on Terraform. We're going to talk about the basics. First command you want to learn when learning Terraform is the init command. And you might be asking yourself, well, what does the init command do? Well, basically, it's going to download the most recent provider code that you're using. So provider, I mean, are you using Azure, AWS, etc. So let's just run it here and ignore all this for now. We don't really, you can see I'm using provider Azure right here. But I'm going to do Terraform init. Whoops. There we go. Oh, I did get the T. And notice that initializes the back end, which is your current directory, and it does 2.45. That is the most recent version. But let's say for reasons you don't want to use the most current version of your provider, you want to use a specified version, or maybe you wrote the code and you want that, since that code is working, you only want to use that version going forward, so you don't have any compatibility issues going forward. So I'm going to change here to a folder I have called old release, and you see it's specifying the provider I want to use for Azure-a. What version I want to use of my provider. And here I'm specifying 2.10. So when I run the init command now, instead of being version 2.45, it's going to be 2.10 for now and forever. Let's see how that goes. As you can see now, it's version 2.10 as opposed to 2.45. The main reason for doing that is in case your provider changes some of this code down here, maybe they get rid of public IP address allocation in a new release. Well, if they do that, this Terraform that you wrote, this code is not going to be valid anymore. So this lets you specify the release version of the provider being used. Okay, so now if we go back to my first screen that we were before, ignoring all this, when you run Terraform init, it's going to not check for a version of Terraform necessary. If I go back to my other main.tf in the older release folder, you're going to see it's going to require a version of Terraform of 0.13 or greater, or it's just going to stop. So this is a way to check what version of Terraform you're going to be deploying against. Okay, we're finally going to start writing some code in Terraform to create some resources in Azure. And the first thing I like for you to do is set up a folder structure. I've created a folder called YouTube and then a folder called Video 1 to put my work into. I suggest just following. You call your folder whatever you want, but maybe a parent folder, then a child folder. And so once you do that, I'm going to close here. And then open up Microsoft Code and say File, Open Folder. Go to your parent folder and say Select. Then having the child folder selected, create new file and call that main.tf. Then we're going to cruise over to this URL. I'll put a notepad just so you can see it. We want to go to this URL here. And then copy this bit of text or bit of code. And this, as you can see, is going to set our Azure provider at 2.46 version. And it's also going to select our subscription and tenant ID for us. So copy all that. On line 1 on Microsoft Code. Alright, the next thing we want to do here is fill in our subscription ID and tenant ID by running, you can get this information by running the AZ login. You want to do this anyway to authenticate yourself to Azure. If you're already logged in, you could do the AZ account list command, and that will provide you with your tenant ID as well as your subscription ID. Once you complete those steps, go ahead and go to line 18 and go to line 20 and be ready for our next step, which is to grab what I'm going to call a sample recipe, some sample code, and we can get that from my GitHub website by going to github.com, speedraiser55, and CCAD files. Scroll down if you have to intro module.txt. And you can copy it from here, but I'm going to do a raw and just copy it from right here. And do a copy. Go back to code, and at line 20, go ahead and do a paste. I'm going to make a little more room here. There we go. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I'm going to save my file. At this point in time, I'm not going to go too much in depth of what's going on here, but you can see we have 2 variables defined, and we have 2 resources defined. We're going to create a resource group, and we're going to create a public IP, and you can probably see that the resource group has a default value of rg.test, and we have a variable location. So it doesn't take a guru developer or coder to see that our resource group name here is going to be called rg-test, and our location is going to be in the East US. The public IP resource that's going to be made is going to be called book IP in East US. It's going to be dynamic. And here's something a little special. It's going to use the resource group name of Azure-a Resource Group, which is right here, resource group. Then for the name, it has RG. And it's going to actually use, backtrack. Forget what I put up there. Resource group name, Azure-a Resource Group, that matches. And for the name, we're taking the RG and getting the name property out of it. So it's going to give the name of RG test. All right, so let's go ahead and init this. So Terraform, init. And you can see, right off the bat, I did something incorrect. I need to be in the directory where my main TF file is, and that's in video 1. So cd video 1, I'm going to clear, and I'll do Terraform init. Next, after you do an init, you want to do a Terraform plan. And this time, this will be our second time running plan. And you should see we're going to get a sample output this time. It's going to propose to us or give us feedback on what Terraform is going to deploy for us right after it gets done thinking about it. All right, there we go. And you can see, here's where I typed it in. And it says, Terraform will perform the following actions. It's going to create an IP address for us in this location with this resource group. And it's going to create this resource group for us in the location East US and with that name. All right, but it hasn't done anything yet. This is the plan. So now we want to do a Terraform apply. I want to scroll up here. One thing I don't like about this is in the plan stage, it doesn't really tell you what subscription it's going to. One thing I like better about ARM templates, it did have a method where it showed you Terraform apply again. Yours probably succeeded. I'll catch up. All right, it's going to add those two groups. So I'm going to say yes. And you see now it's going ahead and creating those groups for us. And there, it looks like, you see here now you get the subscription information. I just wish that came earlier just to double check what you're doing. But anyway, let's go check to see if that was made in Azure or not. All right, looks like we were successful. I'm in my Azure account, and you can see I have a resource group called RG Test. Inside is a public IP, so pretty good. The next thing we want to learn is how to delete everything we just created, and that's done with the destroy command. So I'm going to just clear my screen here and type Terraform destroy. And it's kind of nice. It gives you what it's going to destroy. So it's going to destroy one public IP address in our subscription. So that's nice. And a resource group in our subscription called RG Test. That sounds good. I'm going to say yes. This is gonna, once this is complete, we'll check to make sure the resources are gone, and that will end this video. But on the next video, we will be seeing how we could divide this main TF out to 2 other individual files. And then we'll also create more resources, and we'll deploy an entire Windows virtual VM in the next video. Looks like we're still destroying data here, or resources here. Alright, looks like we're all done here, so let's go check to see if they're actually gone in Azure. See if I do a little refresh, what happens. Still thinks it's there. That's Azure for you. Let's go ahead and do a... no, actually it shows the resources gone, so if I come here, if I try to click on this, what happens? Yes, there he goes. Resource not found. So excellent. I'll see you guys on video 2.